The glitz and glamour of the global music industry often mask a stark and punishing reality that unfolds behind the heavy velvet curtains of fame. To the millions of fans watching under the dazzling arena lights, a musical icon appears almost superhuman, delivering flawless vocal performances and radiating unshakable confidence while executing exhausting choreography night after night. We see the triumphs, the prestigious awards, the gold records, and the viral moments that define modern celebrity culture. Yet, we rarely pause to consider the immense physical toll that this relentless lifestyle demands from the creators who shape the soundtrack of our lives. The pressure to remain constantly visible, to smile for endless rows of flashing cameras, and to push through excruciating physical discomfort is a silent requirement embedded in the DNA of show business. Musicians frequently sacrifice their well-being for their art, hiding their private agonies behind a mask of professional perfection, because the industry operates on a wheel that never stops turning. When an artist finally vanishes from the public eye or abruptly cancels a highly anticipated tour, the world is often left in a state of profound shock and speculation, completely unaware of the quiet, desperate battles being fought in the shadows away from the stage. Before we uncover the terrifying medical emergency that recently halted one of the most brilliant careers in contemporary rhythm and blues, we invite you to become a permanent part of our community by subscribing to this channel, ensuring you never miss the deep, inspiring stories behind the headlines that shape our culture. To truly understand how a celebrated musical powerhouse found herself standing on the absolute precipice of survival, one must look closely at the deceptive nature of artistic triumph and the invisible burdens carried by those who seem to have it all. The journey to the top of the entertainment industry requires an almost superhuman level of resilience, where artists are conditioned to ignore the warning signs of their own bodies in pursuit of greatness. We live in an era where success is measured by constant output, relentless touring schedules, and an unwavering digital presence, leaving absolutely no room for human vulnerability or illness. For many years, a brilliant singer and songwriter operated at the absolute apex of this demanding world, secretly managing a severe, unpredictable health condition that threatened to derail everything she had spent her life building. It is a classic tragic paradox of modern fame, where the external world witnesses a continuous ascent to stardom filled with critical acclaim and public adoration, while the internal world of the artist is a battleground of pain and mounting exhaustion. The general public looks at a glamorous performer and sees only the finished, polished product, never imagining the sheer willpower required just to stand upright beneath the scorching stage lights. This invisible struggle creates a dangerous environment where symptoms are minimized, medical advice is delayed, and the show is forced to go on at all costs, setting the stage for a catastrophic collision between professional ambition and biological survival. The specific background of this harrowing story begins deep within the intricate machinery of a major national concert tour, an event that was supposed to be a grand celebration of musical excellence and female empowerment. Bringing together legendary voices for a massive multi-city tour is an enormous logistical and physical undertaking, demanding weeks of rigorous rehearsals, constant travel, and peak vocal performance every single evening. For any performer, being selected to share the stage with iconic figures of the genre is both a massive honor and a grueling test of endurance. As the dates approached in late 2025, the excitement among the fanbase was palpable, and the energy surrounding the production reached a fever pitch. However, behind the scenes, the atmosphere was becoming increasingly tense as a quiet crisis began to brew within the ranks of the performers. One particular artist, celebrated for her profound ability to craft massive hits and deliver deeply moving vocal performances, was arriving at the tour rehearsals already deeply compromised by a long-standing, unpredictable chronic illness that had plagued her adult life for over a decade. Despite the whispering alarms ringing throughout her body, the ingrained professional ethos of the music industry whispered that she had to push through the fatigue, that the fans were waiting, and that stepping away was simply not an option. As the tour commenced and the grueling travel schedule took its inevitable toll, the situation deteriorated from a challenging health struggle into a frightening medical emergency. The artist began experiencing a severe, relentless cough that grew more aggressive with each passing day, a symptom that is particularly terrifying for anyone whose voice is their livelihood. To navigate the demanding schedule, she found herself relying heavily on an array of temporary medications, desperately attempting to suppress the escalating symptoms just to survive the daily press appearances, fan meet and greets, and intense live performances. It became a routine of hidden agony, where she would find herself coughing and spitting into cups in private dressing rooms, only to walk out a moment later into a barrage of cameras, flashing smiles, and pretending that everything was perfectly fine. The simple act of posing for a photograph or walking across a venue felt like sprinting an entire marathon, leaving her huffing, puffing, and completely drained of vital oxygen. The sheer contrast between the vibrant, energetic persona presented to the public and the exhausted, breathless reality behind closed doors grew wider and more dangerous by the hour. As her immune system was quietly collapsing under the dual weight of a demanding career and a predatory underlying disease, the turning point arrived with devastating swiftness as the winter holiday season approached, bringing with it a harsh realization that no amount of willpower could overcome the biological crisis unfolding inside her chest. What had initially been dismissed or hoped to be a manageable bout of exhaustion rapidly transformed into a severe, aggressive case of pneumonia, an infection that poses a grave danger to anyone, but is uniquely lethal to an individual already battling a systemic autoimmune disorder. The illness stripped away the last remaining defenses of her body, making it physically impossible to take the stage or fulfill her obligations to the tour. With a heavy heart and a sense of profound disappointment, she was forced to make the painful public announcement that she was officially dropping out of the remaining tour dates, leaving fans saddened but largely unaware of the true, terrifying depth of the situation. The true horror of the crisis manifested around the Thanksgiving holiday, a time meant for family and gratitude, which instead became a descent into complete darkness for the singer. Her health took a sudden, catastrophic turn for the worse, spiraling completely out of control until her conscious awareness faded away, leading to a terrifying moment where she lost all track of time and reality, eventually waking up days later inside the stark, sterile walls of a hospital intensive care unit. This frightening awakening was not the end of her ordeal, but rather the terrifying beginning of a medical nightmare that would force her to confront her own mortality in a way few human beings ever have to experience. Waking up inside the sterile, fluorescent-lit environment of a hospital intensive care unit is a disorienting and deeply frightening experience for anyone, but for a world-renowned, two-time Grammy-winning musical artist at the absolute height of her career, it felt like an abrupt and cruel fracture in the fabric of reality. The familiar sounds of roaring arena crowds, backstage chatter, and studio playback were suddenly replaced by the cold, rhythmic, and mechanical ticking of medical monitors, the steady hiss of oxygen machines, and the hurried whispers of specialized physicians. As conscious awareness slowly returned to Muni Long, born Priscilla Renea Hamilton, the gravity of her physical collapse began to set in with terrifying clarity. This was no longer a matter of simple exhaustion, a strained vocal cord, or a temporary bout of overworking that could be cured with a few days of bed rest and hydration. The aggressive pneumonia that had forced her to abruptly abandon her coveted spot on Brandy and Monica's high-profile tour had acted as a catastrophic catalyst, igniting a massive, uncontrolled flare-up of the underlying chronic illness she had quietly battled for over a decade. The medical team surrounding her bedside did not offer comfort or gentle platitudes. Instead, they delivered a stark, brutal, and unimaginable ultimatum that instantly shattered her world. The doctors informed her that her lungs were failing so rapidly that she had exactly 1 single week left to live unless she underwent an immediate double lung transplant. The sheer shock of this pronouncement left the 37-year-old singer completely paralyzed, a moment she would later describe with a mix of lingering trauma and disbelief, recalling that her jaw literally dropped in response to the clinical coldness of the news. In her mind, she initially reacted with a defense mechanism of disbelief, thinking the doctors were being remarkably rude and dramatic, unable to fully process that her vibrant life could be summarized in a 7-day countdown. However, the medical staff quickly dismantled any lingering illusions, looking her directly in the eyes to emphasize that this was absolutely not a joke or a drill. They presented her with a grim, uncompromising binary choice that no young mother or successful artist should ever have to face. She could either choose to enter hospice care to be made comfortable while waiting for the inevitable end, or she could agree to have her chest opened and her failing lungs completely replaced with those of a deceased donor. This devastating moment forced her to instantly confront the terrifying reality of her own mortality, stripping away the armor of celebrity, vanity, and professional ambition, leaving her exposed to the raw, fragile nature of human existence. To truly understand why a highly treatable respiratory infection like pneumonia could rapidly escalate into a one-week death sentence for an otherwise young and vibrant woman, one must look deep into the complex, predatory nature of the underlying disease Muni Long had been fighting since 2014. For 12 long years, she had been diagnosed with systemic lupus erythematosus, a chronic and deeply malicious autoimmune disorder that completely disrupts the body's natural defense mechanisms. In a healthy individual, the immune system produces specialized antibodies designed to seek out and destroy dangerous external invaders like viruses and bacteria. However, in a patient suffering from lupus, this intricate biological security system malfunctions catastrophically. The body begins to misidentify its own healthy tissues as hostile threats and starts producing rogue antibodies that relentlessly attack its own organs, joints, and systems. Lupus is a notoriously unpredictable and cruel disease because it possesses a wide and erratic range of severity. For some fortunate sufferers, the condition manifests as relatively mild, manageable problems, while for others, it triggers life-threatening, irreversible organ damage targeting the heart, the kidneys, and, as Muni Long tragically discovered, the delicate tissues of the respiratory system. Long before her hospitalization in late 2025, the daily reality of living with this autoimmune predator was a testament to her immense physical endurance and silent suffering. She had previously used social media platforms to give her fans a rare, unvarnished glimpse into the agonizing reality of her condition, writing with raw honesty about how lupus would frequently make absolutely everything in her body throb and ache. She described bizarre, excruciating scenarios where merely wearing standard clothing like tights would cause the skin on her legs to throb with intense, unbearable pain, making the simple act of putting on clothes a daily exercise in torture. This chronic pain, accompanied by profound morning joint stiffness, muscle aches, and constant fatigue, was something she had to navigate almost every single day while maintaining the high energy, flawless appearance demanded by the global music industry. The disease is frequently misdiagnosed or mistaken for other joint and blood conditions, requiring complex blood tests to measure the specific antibodies attacking the body, and because there is currently no known cure. Treatment relies heavily on managing symptoms through powerful anti-inflammatory medications and high-dose steroids. When the pneumonia struck her already compromised system, her lupus-ravaged body simply could not mount a defense, turning her lungs into an active battleground of irreversible destruction. Faced with the immediate necessity of a double lung transplant, Muni Long found herself trapped in a profound internal conflict that pitted the core of her artistic identity against the basic instinct for survival. For a vocalist of her caliber, whose entire life, career, and soul are intrinsically tied to the mechanics of her voice, the prospect of undergoing massive cardiothoracic surgery was accompanied by an overwhelming wave of existential dread. The ego and vanity inherent to a celebrated performer immediately raised terrifying questions about what would happen to her distinct, Grammy-winning voice once a breathing tube was inserted and foreign organs were placed into her chest. She initially feared that the surgery would permanently strip away her ability to sing, effectively destroying the very thing that defined her place in the world. Yet, this internal storm of artistic anxiety was instantly quieted when she shifted her focus away from her career and toward the most important person in her life, her 3-year-old son, Tatum, whom she shares with her ex-husband, Raycian Hairston. Looking at her young son and realizing how much more life she desperately wanted to live completely reframed her priorities, forcing her to accept that quality of life, and being a present mother had to come before any professional considerations. She came to the powerful, grounding realization that she could not sing at all if she was no longer on this earth, and it was the love for her child that ultimately cemented her brave decision to sign the consent forms and place her life entirely in the hands of the surgical team. The decision to proceed with the double lung transplant marked the beginning of an extraordinarily intense and high-stakes medical operation that would permanently alter the course of her life. A double lung transplant is one of the most complex, physically demanding, and risky procedures in modern medicine, requiring the perfect synchronization of organ procurement networks, specialized transplant surgeons, and advanced life support systems. The procedure involves making a major incision across the chest, carefully disconnecting the failing diseased lungs from the complex web of pulmonary arteries, veins, and airways, and painstakingly sewing the healthy donor lungs into place while the patient is kept alive by a heart-lung bypass machine. For Muni Long, the stakes were compounded by the fact that her illness had left her incredibly weak, meaning her body would have to fight with everything it had just to survive the hours-long trauma of the operating room. The transition from being a celebrated star, walking red carpets, and accepting major awards to becoming a critically ill patient dependent on modern technology for her next breath is a humbling, transformative journey that reshapes a person's entire worldview, setting the stage for a grueling, uncertain road to recovery. Surviving the brutal physical trauma of a double lung transplant is a monumental medical victory, but for an artist deeply rooted in the world of music, the true battle begins during the long, uncertain months of recovery and rehabilitation. 6 months after the intricate surgical procedure that saved her life from a one-week ultimatum, Muni Long has emerged into the light, declaring her current state of health as absolutely fabulous. The grueling journey of post-operative recovery required her to relearn how to breathe using an entirely new set of lungs, a profound physical adaptation that demands immense patience, intensive physical therapy, and an unyielding will to live. As she reached the critical 6-month milestone in mid-2026, the singer proudly shared that she is now entirely asymptomatic, experiencing no lingering symptoms, no infections, and none of the terrifying complications that frequently threaten transplant recipients during the delicate initial phase of recovery. The final crucial step in this remarkable medical odyssey involves a comprehensive vocal checkup scheduled for August 2026, a highly anticipated evaluation that follows a necessary, subsequent vocal surgery aimed at repairing and protecting her precious vocal instruments after the trauma of prolonged intubation and life support. This triumphant return from the absolute brink of death is a testament to the resilient spirit of an extraordinary woman who spent decades building a monumental legacy in the music industry before the world ever knew her name as a solo artist. Long before she captured global attention under the moniker Muni Long, she operated for years as Priscilla Renea Hamilton, a legendary and prolific songwriting powerhouse working behind the scenes to craft the sonic landscape of contemporary pop and rhythm and blues. Her unparalleled ability to tap into raw human emotion and translate it into massive, chart-topping hits made her one of the most sought-after creative minds in the entire entertainment ecosystem. She is the brilliant architectural mind behind iconic global anthems that have defined entire eras of popular culture, including the soaring, emotional ballad California King Bed performed by Rihanna, the infectious, multi-platinum pop phenomenon Worth It by Fifth Harmony, and the massive, high-energy global dance anthem Timber by Pitbull. For years, her genius was woven into the fabric of the music industry, anchoring the success of the world's biggest superstars, while she quietly accumulated the artistic wisdom and resilience that would later sustain her through her darkest hours. The transition from a legendary behind-the-scenes architect to a front and center global superstar was a daring leap of faith that ultimately culminated in magnificent critical acclaim and widespread public adoration. When she stepped into the spotlight as Muni Long, she brought with her a lifetime of experience, a deeply distinct vocal identity, and a profound vulnerability that resonated instantly with millions of listeners worldwide. Her dedication to her solo career yielded massive artistic dividends, earning her 2 prestigious Grammy Awards and solidifying her status as a vital voice in modern rhythm and blues. Her artistic momentum reached a spectacular peak with the release of her 4th studio album, the deeply personal and critically acclaimed project titled Revenge, which earned a highly coveted nomination for Best R&B Album at the 67th Annual Grammy Awards. This incredible professional milestone occurred just as her body was quietly enduring the mounting pressure of her chronic autoimmune disorder, illustrating the beautiful, tragic irony of an artist achieving the absolute pinnacle of creative success, while simultaneously standing on the precipice of a devastating physical collapse. The profound journey through the valleys of chronic illness, catastrophic organ failure, and miraculous medical rebirth has fundamentally reshaped her perspective on life, artistry, and the true meaning of success. Throughout her entire decade-long battle with systemic lupus erythematosus, she was forced to carry the invisible, heavy burden of systemic pain while projecting an aura of effortless glamour and unshakable strength to the outside world. The sudden, terrifying descent into a life-threatening coma and the subsequent necessity of a double lung transplant stripped away the superficial layers of celebrity, leaving her face-to-face with the core elements of her humanity. The fear of losing her signature voice, which once seemed like an unbearable professional tragedy, was completely eclipsed by the profound, unconditional love she holds for her young son, Tatum, who served as her ultimate anchor and the driving force behind her decision to choose life over vanity. By prioritizing her quality of life and embracing the radical intervention of a transplant, she demonstrated that true strength lies not in pretending to be invincible, but in possessing the courage to acknowledge one's vulnerability and fight desperately for the chance to see tomorrow. As Muni Long approaches her final comprehensive medical clearances and prepares to fully step into the vibrant world she nearly left behind, her story stands as a beacon of hope, awareness, and profound inspiration for millions of individuals worldwide. Her harrowing experience sheds a crucial, much-needed spotlight on the hidden realities of living with systemic autoimmune disorders like lupus, reminding the public that behind the polished imagery of fame are real human beings fighting quiet, exhausting battles for their health every single day. Her triumphant recovery proves that even when faced with a grim one-week survival ultimatum, the combination of advanced medical science, the profound generosity of organ donation, and an unbreakable human spirit can orchestrate a miraculous turnaround. She returns to her life, her family, and her music stronger than ever before, carrying inside her chest the literal breath of life and a renewed, profound purpose. Having successfully navigated the darkest storm of her existence, she stands ready to reclaim her place on the global stage, armed with a powerful new lease on life, an unbreakable bond with her young son, and a voice that will undoubtedly sing with a deeper, more resonant beauty than ever before.